The stars burned quietly in the endless dark, but something new came to disturb their peace. From the black edge of the galaxy, ships appeared one by one, sliding out of hyperspace like shadows tearing holes in the night. Each vessel was sharp, angular and cold. They moved without sound, but their very presence screamed of war. This was no peaceful arrival. This was an invasion. The Galactic Empire had come. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with fear. Its fleets crushed whole worlds. Its armies burned cities to ash. Planets surrendered at the mere sight of the imperial crest carved into a warship's hull. Resistance was rare, because resistance always ended in silence. Now, the Empire's gaze had turned to Earth. At first, other species laughed at the idea. The Terrans were young, reckless, and loud. Their homeworld had only reached the stars a few centuries earlier. Compared to the ancient races, humanity was a child. The Empire expected Earth to fall in days, perhaps hours, but they did not understand humanity. The first sign of the invasion came when an entire colony on the edge of Terran space vanished. No message, no survivors. Just silence. When rescue ships arrived, they found wreckage drifting in orbit, burned-out habitats, and shadows of bodies frozen in the void. A message was carved into the hull of one broken station, 4 words written in fire. The Empire is here. News spread fast. Panic filled the outer colonies. Traders abandoned their routes. Civilian ships raced for the safety of Earth's core systems. The Empire had come like a storm, and the galaxy trembled at the thought of another war. But humanity did not tremble. When the first Imperial fleet crossed into Terran space, something strange happened. Instead of fear, instead of chaos, human leaders met in silence. Then one by one they began to smile. It was a small thing at first, a curl of lips, a glint in the eye, but it spread. Commanders smiled, soldiers smiled, civilians watching from a distance smiled too. Even when the news screens showed Imperial dreadnoughts blotting out suns, humanity did not weep, humanity grinned. The galaxy could not understand. Other species watched with horror. They whispered, "Why do the humans smile when death comes? Why? Do they laugh when the stars darken?" The answer was simple. Humans had been waiting. Deep inside a hidden war council beneath the surface of Luna, Terran generals sat around a vast circular table. Holographic stars glowed above them. Red symbols marked every Imperial fleet, hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons. The Empire's reach stretched far, and it now pressed against Earth like a blade at the throat. Admiral Rains leaned forward. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp, alive. "The Empire believes we are weak," he said, voice calm, almost amused. "They see a young race and think us children. They are wrong." Around him, the generals nodded. Some even chuckled. "They don't know," said General Harker, tapping a finger against the glowing map. "They don't know we've been preparing for this moment for decades. They don't know what's waiting for them out there in the dark." The map shifted. Hidden fleets appeared in blue. Dozens of Terran warships, unknown to the galaxy, sat in silence behind asteroid belts, inside gas giants and beneath cloaked stations. Humanity had not wasted its time. From the moment they reached the stars, Terrans had suspected an enemy would come. Too many ruins had been found on distant worlds. Too many warnings carved into ancient stone. Other races ignored them, but humans had listened. Quietly, they built. Quietly, they waited. Now, the trap was ready. But first, the Empire would strike. The first clash came at the colony of Helios Prime. An Imperial fleet of 50 warships dropped from hyperspace without warning. Their ships shone black like blades, bristling with weapons. They descended toward the planet with arrogance, certain of victory. The colony's defense fleet was small. Only a dozen Terran ships stood guard. To the Empire, it looked like a slaughter. Waiting to happen, broadcast the surrender order. an Imperial commander said, his voice flat and cruel. "Make them kneel." The message went out. The people of Helios Prime were told to abandon hope, to bow, to give up their world. The Empire promised mercy if they obeyed, and fire if they resisted. The Terran Fleet did not answer. Instead, a single message came back. A video feed. It showed the captain of the lead Terran ship. He was calm. He looked straight into the Imperial. "Cameras," and he smiled. The commander frowned. "What is the meaning of this?" The human captain spoke 4 words, simple, cold. "We've been waiting for you." Then the battle began. The Empire's ships fired first. Beams of white-hot energy cut across the void. Plasma bursts shattered the silence. The Terran ships should have been torn apart, but instead of breaking, they moved with impossible precision. Terran. Ships darted between shots, shields shimmering, counterfire blazing. Their weapons were not the crude cannons the Empire expected. They were refined, deadly, exact. Lasers punched holes through Imperial armor. Railguns tore apart ships with brutal force. Torpedoes slipped past defenses to erupt inside enemy hulls. 4. Every human ship destroyed. 3 Imperial ships followed. This Empire was stunned. No one had ever stood against them like this. No one had dared to fight and laugh at the same time. But the Terrans did. Every time a human ship fired, the crews cheered. Every time a commander gave an order, he smiled. The more the Empire raged, the more humanity grinned. When the smoke cleared, the Empire had lost 20 ships. The Terrans lost only 4. The rest of the fleet remained, battered but standing tall. Helios Prime was not conquered, it was defended. The galaxy gasped. For the first time in centuries, the Empire had been forced to retreat. Across alien worlds, whispers spread like wildfire. Stories of the smiling humans. Stories of their defiance. Some called it madness, others called it courage. A few dared to hope, but the Empire was not done. Far away, deep in the Imperial throne world, the High Emperor listened to reports. His face was carved in stone, cold and merciless. He heard of Helios Prime. He heard of the Terran smile. "Fools," he said. His voice echoed through the Grand Chamber. "They think themselves strong because they survived one battle. They will learn. The Empire does not forgive. The Empire does not forget. And when I am finished, their smiles will burn with their world." Orders went out. New fleets were gathered. A storm was coming, larger and darker than anything humanity had faced. And yet on Earth, in the War Council beneath Luna, the Terrans did not fear. They prepared. They sharpened their weapons. They trained their soldiers. And every man and woman who heard the Emperor's words smiled, because humanity knew a secret the galaxy had forgotten. The Empire had power. The Empire had fleets. The Empire had terror. But humanity had something stronger. They had the will to fight. And they had only just begun. The news of Helios Prime spread like fire across the stars. One colony had stood against the Empire and lived. A young race, barely known in the wider galaxy, had done what no ancient civilization dared. They fought the Empire, and they smiled while doing it. Other worlds did not believe at first. They thought the reports were lies, twisted stories meant to inspire hope. But then came the recordings, videos smuggled out by traders, images of human warships darting between Imperial guns, sound files of Terran captains laughing as their cannons roared. The galaxy trembled, the Empire fumed. Humanity smiled. Beneath the grey surface of Luna, deep inside a bunker carved into solid rock, the Terran War Council gathered. The chamber was circular, lit by glowing star maps suspended in the air. Blue lights marked human fleets. Red lights marked Imperial forces pushing into the outer colonies. The map looked unbalanced, hopeless. The Empire outnumbered the Terrans 10-1. Yet no one in the room showed fear. Admiral Rain stood at the center, his hands clasped behind his back. His uniform was simple, dark blue, marked only with the silver crest of Earth. His face was calm, his eyes sharp. He watched the glowing red fleets crawl across the map like poison veins. Then, slowly, he smiled. "They believe we are children," he said. His voice was steady, calm, but filled with something harder than steel. "They think us fragile. They think we will kneel. But they do not know us." The other generals leaned forward. Their faces were worn, some scarred, some old, but all alive with the same fire. General Harker, broad-shouldered and scarred from past wars, let out a dry laugh. "They came thinking they would frighten us. They came thinking we would beg. Instead, they found us laughing in their faces." General Solana, her dark eyes sharp as knives, tapped the glowing map with one finger. "Do not mistake their arrogance for weakness. They are gathering more fleets. Every star system under their command will burn fuel to crush us. We are small. They are vast. We cannot fight them in open war." "No," Rains agreed. "We cannot. But we do not need to." He raised one hand, and the map shifted. Hidden symbols appeared. Blue lights that had been invisible now glowed across the map. Fleets hidden in asteroid belts. Warships docked inside hollow moons. Defense stations cloaked inside nebulae. The galaxy had not seen these forces, but they had been waiting, silent for years. "We built in secret," Rain said. "While the galaxy mocked us as reckless children, we prepared. While the Empire ruled with fear, we studied. Every wreck we found, every ruin we uncovered, every scrap of alien technology. We took it, learned from it, made it ours, and we built. This war is not a surprise. It is what we expected." The room was silent for a moment. Then Harker grinned. Solana's lips curved slightly. Even the younger officers around the table began to smile. "That," Rain said, "is why we do not fear. That is why we smile." Outside the chamber, the Terran fleet prepared for the next battle. Shipyards worked day and night. Massive carriers slid from their docks. Fighters swarmed like steel bees around them. Soldiers trained in zero-gravity halls, their rifles snapping to target in perfect rhythm. Engineers tested railguns, plasma lances, and shield generators that glowed with humming energy. Everywhere humans smiled, but not all smiles were without doubt. In the lower decks of the fleet's flagship, a young soldier named Mason sat with his squad. He was only 20, his uniform still crisp, his hands still shaking when he loaded his rifle. He had seen the recordings of Helios Prime, but he had never fought. "Why do they smile?" he asked quietly. His voice cracked, too young, too uncertain. "The generals, the captains, even the civilians, everyone smiles. But why?" His squad leader, Sergeant Vale, looked at him. She was older, her face marked by hard years and harder choices. She sat in silence for a moment, then finally answered. "Because fear is what the Empire wants," she said. "They rule through it. They expect it. Every world they conquer falls because of it. But when we smile, we show them we are different. We are not afraid. We are not broken, and that makes us dangerous." Mason swallowed hard, but when the sergeant smiled, he tried too. It felt strange, awkward, but it was a beginning. While soldiers trained and shipyards burned with light, the galaxy watched. On distant worlds, alien leaders debated. Some whispered that humanity would bring ruin to them all. Others whispered that maybe, just maybe, the humans would succeed where they had failed. In the throne world of the Empire, the Emperor sat in silence on his vast black throne. Before him, holograms of his commanders flickered. They reported the loss at Helios Prime, their voices trembling. "The humans," one admiral said, eyes lowered. "They fought like no other. They did not break. They did not yield." The Emperor's hand clenched around the arm of his throne. His eyes were cold, like frozen suns. "Then they will burn," he said. "Send more fleets, 10 times their number. Crush their colonies, burn their worlds, erase their name from the stars." The admirals bowed. The order spread across the galaxy. Imperial fleets gathered like storm clouds, but on Earth, in the War Council chamber, the generals already knew. They had expected this. They had wanted this. "They are coming," Solana said. "In greater numbers. They believe more." "Ships will break us." "They are wrong," Rains said. His smile widened. "The more they send, the more we will destroy. Every fleet that enters our space will not return, and soon the galaxy will see that the Empire bleeds." The others nodded. The trap was set. The next battle would not be at a colony. It would not be at a border. The Terrans had chosen their ground, a barren system filled with asteroid fields and gas clouds that bent sensors. To the Empire, it would look like empty space. To humanity, it was a weapon. Terran fleets waited in silence, hidden among rocks and dust. Engines hummed softly, weapons primed. Crews sat at their stations, calm, smiling. In the distance, the red glow of the Empire approached. Hundreds of ships, a storm of fire. The Empire believed they were the hunters, but the humans had been waiting. And when the first Imperial ship crossed into the system, when its sensors failed to see the hidden Terran fleet, when its commander looked into the empty dark, he did not know the truth until it was too late. Single human transmission broke the silence. A calm voice, filled with steady defiance. "Welcome to the trap." Then the stars lit with fire. The dark between the stars was silent. Ships drifted in formation, hidden among rocks and dust. Terran. Crews waited, weapons armed, hearts steady. The Empire was coming. For days, scouts had tracked them. Hundreds of ships, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts, an entire Imperial fleet, proud and unstoppable. They moved like a storm, their black hulls glowing with cold light. Each ship carried weapons strong enough to break a city. Each commander believed the fight would be simple. The Terrans knew better. At the edge of the system, a single Terran ship floated in open space. It was small, old compared to the massive dreadnought that loomed before it. To the Empire, it looked like prey. The lone human vessel had no chance against a ship 10 times its size. The Imperial commander smirked when the small ship appeared on his sensors. "A stray," he said. "Destroy it. Let this be an example." His crew moved quickly. Weapons charged. The dreadnought prepared to fire, but then the image came on screen. A human captain stared back at him. The man looked calm. He did not beg for mercy. He did not plead. He smiled. "You think we are weak," the captain said softly. "You think we will run, but you are wrong." The Imperial commander narrowed his eyes. "You dare?" The human cut him off. "We've been waiting for you." And then the trap was sprung. The lone Terran ship fired, not with desperation, but with precision. Its railgun roared, the shot cutting across the void like lightning. The projectile slammed into the dreadnought's shields. The Empire expected the shields to hold, but the humans had studied their enemies. They knew where the armor was weakest. They knew where to strike. The railgun shell pierced the dreadnought's side, tearing open metal and spilling fire into the stars. The dreadnought shuddered. Systems flickered. For the first time in centuries, an Imperial ship realized it was not invincible. Before the crew could recover, the void itself lit up. Dozens of Terran warships emerged from the asteroid fields, silent hunters, now turned predators. Fighters streaked from their carriers, mines detonated in clouds of fire. The Empire's fleet had walked into a battlefield designed by humans. The Empire fired back with fury. Beams of light cut through the dark. Plasma burned across the void. Terran ships were hit, shields crackling, hulls shattering. Some were torn apart instantly. But still they fought. Still they smiled. Admiral Rains stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the battle unfold on a vast display. His officers moved quickly, voices calm, hands steady. Every time a Terran ship destroyed an enemy, cheers rippled through. "The fleet, they are disoriented," Rains said. "Press them, cut their lines, break their pride." Orders flew out. Human ships moved like wolves around a wounded beast. Small frigates darted between Imperial cruisers, firing torpedoes that struck with brutal force. Carriers released swarms of fighters that ripped into enemy hulls like biting insects. Larger Terran warships fired railguns and plasma lances, tearing through armor the galaxy had once thought unbreakable. And everywhere the humans smiled. In the lower decks, Mason sat strapped into his seat aboard a fighter. His hands shook as the cockpit trembled around him. This was his first real battle. Outside, the void was filled with fire and death. He felt fear claw at his chest, but he remembered Sergeant Vale's words. "Fear is what the Empire wants. Smile, and you take their weapon away." So Mason grinned, teeth clenched, and dove his fighter into the storm. He fired at an Imperial gunship, the blast tearing through its engines. The ship exploded, scattering debris across the void. Mason laughed, not in madness but in defiance. The Empire's fleet began to falter. Commanders shouted in disbelief. They had never faced an enemy who fought like this. Other species broke when the Empire came. Other species begged for peace. But these humans, they charged. They laughed. They smiled as they killed. The Imperial dreadnought tried to retreat, engines burning, but Terran ships swarmed it. Railguns ripped its hull apart, explosions rocked its frame. The massive vessel, once the pride of the Empire, split into two flaming halves. The galaxy had never seen such a sight. Still, the battle was far from over. The Empire had numbers. For every ship destroyed, more filled the void. The Terrans fought hard, but losses grew. Hulls cracked, crews screamed, ships burned. On the flagship, Rains stood tall. He watched red lights vanish from the map one by one. Imperial ships were falling, but so were his own. "Hold the line," he ordered. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with fire. "Do not let them pass. Every second we hold is another nail in their coffin." The battle dragged on. Hours felt like days. The void was filled with wreckage, with fire, with shadows of ships drifting lifeless. Then, slowly, the tide turned. The Empire's formations broke. Their commanders grew desperate. Their lines collapsed. The Terrans pushed forward with everything they had. Fighters screamed past burning cruisers. Battleships tore apart carriers with relentless fire. And then it was done. Silence returned too. The void. Wreckage drifted, glowing faintly against the stars. The Empire's fleet was gone. Only fragments remained. The Terrans had lost ships, yes, but they had won. Against all odds, they had won. On the flagship, cheers erupted. Officers clapped each other on the shoulders. Crews shouted with joy. Mason sat in his cockpit, chest heaving, a wild smile on his face. He had survived. He had fought. He was no longer afraid. Admiral Rains did not cheer. He stood in silence, his eyes fixed on the stars. "They will come again," he said quietly, "in greater numbers, in greater fury, but let them come. Today we have shown them the truth. We are not prey. We are not weak. We are human." And when the message spread across the galaxy, when other worlds saw the recordings, when they watched Terrans fight and laugh in the face of the Empire, they whispered a new name, the Smiling Defenders, and the galaxy would never forget them. The galaxy had seen the Empire burn before. Worlds had fallen, fleets had died, but always the Empire remained. Unbroken, always. It was the victor. Until now, the battles at Helios Prime and the trap in the asteroid fields had changed everything. The mighty Imperial fleet had been beaten back not once, but twice, and the enemy was not some ancient race or hidden power. It was humanity, the young species the galaxy had laughed at. Now, no one laughed. In the throne hall of the Empire, silence reigned. The Emperor sat upon his black throne, tall and cold, his cloak heavy with woven gold. Around him, admirals and generals stood in uneasy lines. None dared to speak. The walls themselves seemed to tremble with his fury. At last, the Emperor's voice filled the chamber, sharp and cutting. "Explain!" Admiral Kryos stepped forward. His uniform was perfect, but sweat glistened at his brow. He bowed low before speaking. "The Terrans are not as weak as we believed, my lord. They fight with tactics we have not seen before. Their ships, their weapons." He faltered under the Emperor's gaze. "They have studied us." The Emperor's fingers tightened on the armrest. "You mean to tell me that children who crawled into the stars barely centuries ago dare to stand against us?" "Yes, my lord," Kryos whispered, "and they do not fear us. They smile." A ripple of unease spread through the chamber. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Smile? They fight with laughter on their lips," Kryos said, almost choking on the words. "Our fleets report humans grinning even as their ships burn. It is unnatural." For a long moment the chamber was silent. Then the Emperor rose. He towered over his commanders, his voice like thunder. "Then let them. Smile as they die. Double our fleets, triple them, burn every world they hold, leave nothing but ash. I will break their smiles with fire." The admirals bowed, but none could shake the thought that for the first time in living memory, the Empire was afraid. Far across the stars, on the Terran flagship Resolute, Admiral Rains studied the wreckage drifting outside. The last Imperial fleet lay shattered, its broken hulks glowing faintly in the void. His officers worked quietly around him, their faces tired but alive. "They will come again," Rains said softly. "In greater numbers. They will not accept this defeat." General Solana stood beside him, arms folded. Her eyes were hard. "Let them. The more they send, the more they lose. Each battle bleeds them. Each loss teaches us more." Rains nodded. He turned to the crew. "Signal all fleets. Begin salvage operations. Gather every scrap of their technology. We will use their own power against them." Around him, the officers smiled. They knew the truth. Every defeat for the Empire was a victory not just of weapons, but of spirit. Humanity was proving that fear could be broken. In the outer colonies, civilians whispered stories. Traders carried recordings across the stars. Videos of Terran ships darting through fire. Footage of captains grinning as they gave the order to attack. Images of soldiers laughing even as explosions rocked their stations. The legend grew. On the world of Vela, an alien merchant played a recording in a crowded hall. Hundreds gathered to watch as human ships tore apart a dreadnought. When the video ended, silence hung in the air. Then a young alien whispered, "They are not afraid of death." Another answered, voice trembling, "No, they welcome it." The whispers spread like wildfire. On world after world, species who had lived in terror of the Empire began to hope. Maybe the humans were mad. Maybe they were brave. Maybe they were both. But they were winning, and the Empire was learning fear. Deep in Terran space, Mason sat with his squad aboard a carrier. The young soldier's hands were still scraped from his last fight, but his grin was wide. "Did you see it?" he asked. "That dreadnought split in two. I thought it was going to crush us, but we tore it apart." The squad laughed with him. Even Sergeant Vale allowed herself a small smile. "Don't get cocky," she warned. "We've only won battles. The war has just begun. The Empire will come back harder than ever." Mason nodded, but the smile stayed on his face. He had seen death, and he had laughed in its face. The fear that once lived inside him was gone. 2 weeks later, the Empire struck again. At the colony of Lorian, civilians fled to bunkers as Imperial ships descended, hundreds of them. Their weapons glowed, ready to erase the planet from existence. But waiting above the colony was the Terran Fleet. Admiral Rains commanded from the Resolute, his voice steady as the enemy appeared. "Hold positions. Let them think us weak. Let them believe this will be quick." The Imperial commander broadcast a message. His face filled Terran screens, twisted with arrogance. "Humans," he sneered. "Your defiance ends here. Surrender, and we may let your people live." Rains smiled. His officers smiled. His soldiers smiled. The reply was simple: no. The battle that followed shook the stars. Imperial dreadnoughts fired in fury, beams of energy tearing across the void. Terran ships weaved between them, answering with railguns and torpedoes. Fighters clashed in swarms, tiny specks of light darting. Between giants, on the ground below, civilians huddled in bunkers, listening to the thunder above. Children asked if the humans would win again. Their parents whispered the only answer they could. They always smile. That means they cannot lose. Hours passed. Ships burned. Crews died. But the Terrans held. Again and again, they refused to break. At last, when the Imperial flagship tried to retreat, Rains gave the order: cut them down. Every Terran ship turned its weapons on the fleeing vessel. Railguns ripped its engines apart. Plasma lances pierced its shields. The massive ship erupted in a final explosion, the shockwave lighting the void. Silence followed, then cheers. Humanity had won again. But in the command deck of another Imperial ship, Admiral Krios watched in horror. His fleet had been destroyed. His Emperor had demanded victory, but he had delivered failure. He stared at the wreckage, at the recordings of humans. Laughing as they killed his men, his hands shook, his breath came in shallow gasps. For the first time in his life, Admiral Krios felt something he had never known: fear. "They smile," he whispered to himself. "They smile as they fight. They smile as they die. What kind of monsters are these humans?" No answer came. Only the silent wreckage of his fleet. Back on Earth, the War Council gathered once more. The generals stood around the glowing map of the galaxy. Red lights still swarmed across it, but now patches of blue pushed them back. "The Empire bleeds," Solana said. "They cannot hide it. They lose ships faster than they can replace them, and the galaxy sees it." Rains nodded. "But they will not stop, not yet. The Emperor's pride will drive him. He will throw everything he has at us. He must. To admit weakness is death for him." "Then we must be ready," Harker said, his grin wide. "We've broken their pride once. We'll do it again." The council laughed together, the sound sharp and fearless. On alien worlds across the galaxy, the legend grew. Stories of smiling humans spread in whispers, in songs, in secret gatherings. Some feared them, some worshipped them, but all spoke their name: the Terrans, the Defenders, the smiling warriors. And in the dark halls of the Empire, commanders began to whisper too, not to each other, but in their own minds, in the silence of the night. What if the humans could not be broken? What if the smiles never faded? For the first time in history, the Empire learned fear, and humanity, watching from the stars, only smiled wider. The galaxy now whispered the name of humanity with awe and with dread. The Empire had lost battles it should have won, worlds once silent under. Imperial rule dared to hope again, but the Emperor was not finished. His pride was wounded, and pride was more dangerous than any fleet. From the throne world, he unleashed orders across the stars: more ships, more soldiers, more fire. If thousands had fallen, then he would send tens of thousands. The humans would drown beneath the weight of his empire. But the humans had been waiting for this moment. Admiral Rains stood at the center of the Terran War Council. The circular chamber was filled with light, a vast map of the galaxy floating above them. Red symbols spread across the stars like a disease. Blue lights, Terran fleets, were fewer, scattered, smaller. To anyone else, the map looked hopeless. To the humans, it was a challenge. "They believe numbers will break us," Rains said. His voice was calm, his face unreadable. Then slowly, a smile curved his lips. "But numbers are not enough, not against what we have prepared." General Harker leaned forward, his scarred hands pressed against the table. "You mean it's ready?" Rains nodded. "It has been ready for years. We only waited for the right time." Around the table, the generals exchanged glances. Even the calmest among them could not hide the spark of excitement in their eyes. Humanity had been holding a secret. Now they would reveal it. In the hidden shipyards of Titan, deep beneath the thick orange clouds, the ground trembled. Cavern doors opened, and fire lit the sky. From the darkness rose a shape so vast it dwarfed everything around it. A warship the size of a city, black steel, sharp lines, endless guns. Its engines glowed like suns, its armor thick enough to shrug off enemy fire. The Leviathan. It was not just a ship, it was a statement. Humanity had built it in silence, hidden from the galaxy, hidden even from their allies. For decades, engineers had labored in secret. Scientists had poured their knowledge into it. Soldiers had trained for the day they would stand aboard it, and now the day had come. As the Leviathan rose into orbit, the crews of smaller ships watched in silence. Then, slowly, cheers erupted across the comm channels. Humanity had forged a weapon the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. On the bridge of the Leviathan, Captain Aria Vale stood tall. Her uniform was crisp, her eyes sharp. She had been chosen to command this ship not only for her skill, but for her unshakable spirit. She ran her hand across the console, feeling the hum of the engines beneath her feet. "She's alive," Aria whispered, "and the Empire will learn to fear her." Her officers smiled, each one aware of the history they were about to make. Word of the Leviathan spread quickly among the Terran Fleet. Soldiers whispered about it in the mess halls. Pilots spoke of its guns with awe. Some called it the Titan, others called it Earth's Fist, but most used the name given at birth, the Leviathan. When Mason heard the news, he could hardly believe it. A ship bigger than a dreadnought, faster than a cruiser, armed with weapons powerful enough to split moons. It sounded like a story, too wild to be true. But when he saw it rising through the clouds of Titan on the hollow screens, his mouth dropped open. Sergeant Vale, standing beside him, smiled faintly. "That's our secret," she said. "That's why we smile. The Empire learned of the Leviathan soon enough. Spies carried the whispers back to the throne world. At first the Emperor laughed. A single ship? Do they think one vessel can stand against an empire? But when he saw the stolen images, when he saw the size, the weapons, the glow of its engines, his laughter faded. He clenched his fist. "Destroy it," he ordered, "at any cost." The chance came quickly. The Empire sent a fleet of 200 ships toward the Terran border. Their goal was simple: lure the Leviathan into battle and erase it before it could change the war. Admiral Rains knew the risk, but he also knew the power of the weapon they had built. "The time has come," he said. "Deploy the Leviathan." The Terran fleet moved like shadows. Carriers and cruisers spread out to form a line of defense. Behind them, hidden among asteroids, the Leviathan waited. The Empire's ships emerged from hyperspace in a storm of fire. Their weapons charged, their commanders sneered. "This will be quick," one Imperial captain said, but then the asteroids parted, and the Leviathan rose. The massive ship dwarfed everything around it. Its hull gleamed in the starlight, its engines burned like suns. And for the first time, the Empire hesitated. "Impossible," an Imperial officer whispered. Aria Vale stood at the command console, her voice calm and steady. "Target their flagship." The Leviathan's main cannon charged. A deep hum filled the void, rising higher and higher until it shook the very air. Then the weapon fired. A beam of pure energy cut through the dark. It struck the Imperial flagship, tearing through shields, armor, and steel as if they were paper. The massive dreadnought exploded in a flash of fire, broken in a single shot. Silence followed. Then the humans smiled. The battle turned into slaughter. Imperial ships fired desperately, but their shots splashed harmlessly against the Leviathan's shields. Terran Fleet struck from every angle, guided by the giant at their center. The Leviathan fired again, and another dreadnought vanished in flame. Mason watched from his fighter as the massive ship cut through the Empire's fleet like a blade. His grin widened as he whispered to himself, "This is why we smile." Dylan. Empire tried to retreat. Their commanders shouted frantic orders, but the Leviathan and the Terran fleet gave no mercy. Torpedoes hunted fleeing ships. Fighters swarmed survivors. By the time the battle ended, the void was littered with burning wreckage. The humans had lost ships, yes, but the Empire had lost everything. When the news spread, the galaxy shook. Worlds oppressed for centuries whispered in awe. The Empire had been wounded before, but now it had been humiliated. A single human ship had destroyed an entire fleet. On alien planets, statues of the Emperor were pulled down in secret. Songs were sung in dark halls about the smiling humans and their great ship. Hope spread faster than fear, and in the halls of the Empire, silence reigned. The Emperor sat on his throne, his face carved from stone. His commanders trembled before him. "One ship," he said softly. His voice was quiet, but filled with fury. "One ship has undone us. One ship has made us afraid." He rose, his cloak swirling around him. "Then we will answer with fire. If they have a Leviathan, then we will build monsters of our own. If they smile at death, then we will give them something that makes even humans weep." The chamber shook with his voice. His commanders bowed, but in their hearts, fear had already taken root, because they had seen the truth. The humans were not weak. The humans were not children. The humans had a weapon that could shake the stars, and they were smiling. The Leviathan's victory changed everything. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy had seen the Empire flee. Not only flee, be crushed. Hundreds of Imperial ships burned in the void, while the humans stood smiling, their massive warship untouched. The story spread fast. Traders carried it across systems. Smugglers whispered it in cantinas. Even Imperial soldiers muttered it in secret when their commanders could not hear. The words were always the same. The humans have a monster. The humans laugh at death. The humans cannot be stopped, but power never goes unnoticed. And soon, the other species of the galaxy began to ask a question of their own. If humans could defeat the Empire, then what else could they do? On the neutral world of Kerios, a meeting was called. The planet was known for its great spires of glass and its council halls where no species ruled. Representatives came from across the stars. Some wore fine robes, others carried weapons. All came with fear in their hearts. At the center stood the Zorathi, tall insectoid beings with eyes like polished stone. Their leader, Vena, spoke first. "The humans have shown strength," she said. Her voice clicked with each word. "But strength can turn. Today they fight the Empire. Tomorrow they may fight us." A murmur spread through the chamber. The Valans, a bird-like species, flapped their wings in agreement. The short, heavy Corlans grunted. Even the silent Keth, cloaked in black, nodded, but another voice rose, smooth and calm. It came from Elder Rill of the Serathi, a water-dwelling species who spoke through translators. "You forget," Rill said. "The humans have not conquered us. They have not demanded tribute. They fight only because the Empire struck first. Perhaps they are not tyrants, but protectors." The council broke into argument. Some shouted for alliance, some hissed warnings, a few demanded action, strike the humans now before they grew too powerful. And in the shadows, Imperial spies listened. Meanwhile, far from Kerios, the humans were preparing for what came next. On the Leviathan, Captain Arya Vale stood at the viewing window, watching stars slide past. Her officers spoke quietly behind her, reviewing supply lines, scanning for enemy fleets, but Arya's mind was elsewhere. She knew the truth. The Leviathan was strong, but it could not win the war alone. Humanity needed allies, and allies were not easy to find in a galaxy ruled by fear. The door opened, and Admiral Rains entered. His face was as calm as ever, but his eyes carried the weight of countless battles. "They are watching us," he said without preamble. Arya turned. "The other species?" "Yes," Rains said. "Some fear us, some want to join us. All wonder what we will do next." Arya folded her arms. "Then we must show them." Mason sat with his squad in the mess hall, the glow of the Leviathan's lights reflecting off metal walls. Soldiers filled the room, eating, laughing, telling stories. The sound was warm, alive. "They say aliens are coming to talk to us," Mason said between bites. "To make deals, to join our side." Sergeant Vale raised an eyebrow. "And you believe that?" "Why not?" Mason grinned. "They've seen us win. Who wouldn't want to stand with the winners?" But Vale's face was serious. "Because some don't see us as winners. They see us as the next empire." The laughter around the table faded. Mason frowned. "You think they'll turn on us?" Vale did not answer. She didn't need to. The first envoy came days later, a Sarathi vessel, sleek and silver, docked with the Leviathan. Its crew glided into the ship in suits of liquid armor, their translucent skin glowing faintly beneath. Captain Arya Vale greeted them in the docking bay, flanked by Terran soldiers. The Sarathi elder bowed low, his watery voice soft. "We come in peace," he said. "We have seen your strength, we have seen your smiles, and we wish to stand beside you." Arya studied him. "Why?" "Because the Empire has broken us too. Many times," the elder said. "We cannot fight alone, but with you, perhaps we can win." The deal was struck quickly. The Sarathi would share their knowledge of shield technology. In return, the humans would protect Sarathi worlds. It was the first true alliance humanity had ever made, but not the last. On Kerios, the council was in uproar. News of the Sarathi alliance had spread. Some called it hope, others called it doom. Vayner of the Sarathi slammed her claw against the floor. "You see, already the humans gather allies. Already they spread their power. If we do not act, we will all kneel beneath them." But Elder Rill only shook his head. "No, if we stand with them, we may finally be free of the Empire." The council divided. Some worlds sent envoys to humanity. Others sent fleets to the Empire. And in the growing storm, the galaxy began to fracture. The Emperor was furious. From his throne, he heard the reports. Human alliances, imperial defeats, whispers of rebellion on once loyal worlds. His face twisted with rage. "Fools," he spat. "They think the humans are saviors? They will learn. The humans are nothing. I will crush them. I will crush their allies. I will burn the galaxy before I bow." He turned to his commanders. "Prepare the Oblivion Armada. We will show the galaxy the true power of the Empire." The chamber shook with the roar of his fury. Back on the Leviathan, the first fleet of Sarathi ships joined formation. Sleek and silver, they shone like blades in the dark. Human crews cheered as they saw them, hope filling their eyes. But Arya Vale did not smile this time. She watched the new fleet carefully, her thoughts sharp. Allies were useful. But allies could also betray. She turned to Admiral Rains. "They fear the Empire, yes, but they also fear us. The moment they think we are too strong, they may turn." Rains nodded. "Then we must make them believe, not just in our strength, but in our purpose." Arya looked back at the Sarathi ships. "And what is our purpose?" Rains smiled faintly. "To win, and to smile while doing it." The next battle proved harder than any before. The Empire struck at the world of Ralos, a mining colony rich in resources. Their fleet came with fire and fury, determined to draw the humans out. This time, it was not only the Terrans who answered. The Sarathi fleet moved beside them, shields glowing, weapons blazing. The battle was chaos. Imperial ships swarmed like locusts. Terran cruisers darted between them, railguns tearing through armor. Sarathi vessels shimmered with light, their shields holding against waves of fire. Mason fought from his fighter, weaving through the storm. He saw Sarathi ships explode beside him, their crews dying with courage. He saw human destroyers burn, their soldiers smiling even in death. At the heart of it all, the Leviathan moved like a god of war. Its main cannon cut through dreadnoughts, its guns shredding cruisers. The battle raged for hours, but when it ended, the humans and their new allies still stood. The Empire was driven back once more. On the ground of Ralos, civilians cheered as Terran and Sarathi soldiers walked together through the ruins. Children ran to them, offering flowers. Mason sat on the rubble, his armor scorched, his face tired. But when a child handed him a small flower, he smiled. Sergeant Vale watched him. For the first time in many battles, she smiled too. Far away, in hidden halls, the Sarathi and others watched. Some spat in anger, others trembled in fear. The humans were winning. And worse, they were not alone anymore. Whispers spread, plots formed. Some would join the humans, some would betray them, and some would plan to destroy them before it was too late. The galaxy was no longer divided between the Empire and its victims. Now a third force had risen, humanity and its allies, but with every victory, the danger grew. Because for every species that smiled at the humans, another looked at them with suspicion. And in the shadows, the Emperor's Oblivion Armada. Prepared to strike, the galaxy thought it had seen the worst of the Empire. Worlds burned, fleets shattered, but nothing compared to what came next. From the black shipyards of the throne world, from forges hidden in dying stars, the Emperor unleashed his answer to the Leviathan, the Oblivion Armada. Thousands of ships, dreadnoughts larger than mountains, cruisers with armor thicker than cities, fighters swarming in endless clouds. And at the center, a flagship so vast it seemed like a floating world. Its name was Eternal Wrath, and it carried a weapon spoken of only in whispers, a cannon that could crack a planet in two. When the Armada moved, the stars themselves seemed to tremble. On the Leviathan, Captain Arya Vale received the first reports. She stood on the bridge as scouts relayed the images. Screens filled with fire, a fleet so large it blotted out the void. Her officers froze. For the first time since the war began, silence fell on the bridge. Admiral Rains entered, his face stern, his eyes sharp. He studied the images without a word. Finally, he said, "The Emperor is done playing." Arya turned. "Can we face them?" Rains did not smile this time. "We must. If we run, the galaxy will fall. If we fight, we may die. But if we smile, perhaps we will win." Mason sat with his squad, the glow of the screens painting their faces pale. The sight of the Armada filled them with dread. Even Mason, who had grinned through every battle, felt his stomach twist. "There are too many," one soldier whispered. Another shook his head. "No one can fight that." Mason clenched his fists. His smile returned, weak but real. "We can. We have before, and we will again." Sergeant Vale looked at him, her eyes steady. "This battle will test us like never before. Hold the line, Mason. No matter what." Mason nodded, though his heart pounded in his chest. Across the galaxy, news spread. The Oblivion Armada had moved. Systems panicked. Some fled into hiding, others begged humans for protection. And some, watching the endless swarm of Imperial ships, gave up hope. But on Earth, in the War Council, the decision was clear. Admiral Raines stood before the generals. The holomap showed the armada advancing, its path clear. It aimed for Vela, the Serathi homeworld, the new ally of humanity. They want to break our alliance, Raines said. If Vela falls, others will fear us. They will abandon us. We cannot let that happen. General Harker slammed his fist on the table. Then we meet them at Vela. The Leviathan, the Terran Fleet, and every ally willing to stand. This is the battle that will decide the war. The Council agreed. The order was given. Every ship humanity had would converge on Vela. The Serathi prepared their defenses. Vast shield generators rose across their oceans. Fleets of silver ships took formation around the planet. Their leaders sent messages of trust and fear both. Elder Reel spoke to Arya Vale through the holoscreen. "We will stand with you," he said. His watery eyes glowed. "But if the Armada is what they say, then today may be the end of us all." Arya only smiled. "Then let us end with laughter." The day came. The stars above Vela darkened. The Oblivion Armada emerged, ship after ship after ship, until the void was filled with steel and fire. At their center loomed the eternal wrath, its shadow falling across the Serathi world. On the Leviathan, alarms blared. Crews rushed to stations, weapons charged, engines roared. Arya Vale stood tall, her voice steady. "All ships, hold formation. We will not break. We will not bow." Mason strapped into his fighter, his hands shaking. He forced a smile. "Here we go again." Sergeant Vale's voice came over comms. "Stay alive, Mason. We need you." The human fleet spread wide. The Serathi joined them, their silver ships shining like knives, and then the Armada fired. The first wave of destruction was blinding. Imperial dreadnoughts unleashed beams of energy, ripping through shields. Serathi cruisers exploded in bursts of flame. Terran destroyers burned, their wrecks spinning into the void. But the humans did not retreat. They charged. Railguns thundered. Torpedoes streaked. Fighters dove into swarms of enemies, weaving between fire, striking with precision. The Leviathan fired its main cannon. The beam ripped through an Imperial battleship, splitting it in half. Crews cheered, but the Armada pressed on. For every ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. The eternal wrath loomed closer, its planet cracker cannon charging. The glow from its core lit the void like a false sun. Arya Vale's eyes narrowed. "Target the cannon. All power to weapons." Leviathan roared. Its guns tore into the flagship's shields, but the eternal wrath did not falter. It moved forward, unstoppable, a monster in the dark. Mason and his squad darted between Imperial fighters. Explosions lit the void around them. His wingman screamed as his ship was torn apart. Mason gritted his teeth, firing again and again. "They just keep coming," he shouted. Sergeant Vale's voice cut through the chaos. "Focus, Mason. Take down their bombers. Protect the Leviathan." Mason nodded, his grin returning. "Aye, Sergeant." He dove through the storm, his guns blazing. Bombers exploded one after another, their wreckage scattering like sparks. On the Serathi homeworld below, civilians huddled in bunkers, watching the battle through trembling screens. Children asked if the humans would win. Parents whispered the answer they hoped was true. They always smile. That means they cannot lose. The battle raged for hours. Both sides bled. The Terran fleet was torn apart, ship by ship. The Serathi lost half their strength. The void became a graveyard of steel and fire. But the Armada still came. On the bridge of the Leviathan, alarms screamed. Shields were failing. Armor cracked. Arya Vale stood firm. "Keep firing. Do not stop." The main cannon charged again. The hum filled the void, shaking every deck. Then it fired. The beam struck the eternal wrath, punching through its shields, tearing into its hull. The giant flagship staggered. For the first time, it seemed mortal. Crews across the Terran fleet cheered. Mason shouted in triumph, but then the Eternal Wrath's planet cracker cannon fired. A single beam, thick as a mountain, shot from its core. It struck a Sarathi ocean. In an instant, the waters boiled, the land cracked, and half a continent vanished. Beneath the sea, the planet screamed. On the Leviathan, silence fell. They had seen the true power of the Armada. Admiral Rains spoke, his voice grim. If that cannon fires again, Vela is lost. Arya's jaw tightened. Then we stop it. The humans and Sarathi threw everything at the flagship. Fighters dove into its guns, sacrificing themselves to weaken its shields. Destroyers rammed enemy cruisers, tearing holes in the formation. The Leviathan pressed forward, every weapon blazing. Mason flew closer to the flagship, dodging fire, weaving between turrets. He shouted into comms, "We're in range! We can hit the cannon!" Sergeant Vale's voice answered, "Do it, Mason, for Vela, for all of us." He smiled, with pleasure. Mason fired everything he had. Missiles, guns, torpedoes, all slammed into the glowing cannon. The blast shook the giant weapon, sending cracks down its frame. The Leviathan's main cannon charged one last time. The ship groaned, its decks shaking, its crew holding their breath. "Fire!" Arya ordered. The beam cut through the void, striking the Eternal Wrath square in the cannon. The explosion was blinding. Fire erupted across the flagship, its great weapon shattered, debris scattering into the stars. The Oblivion Armada faltered. Their greatest weapon was gone. The battle did not end that day. The Armada still fought. The Terran Fleet was nearly destroyed. The Sarathi bled. The Leviathan itself burned, but the humans had stopped the planet cracker. Vela still lived, and though the Armada remained, the galaxy now knew one thing: even against the greatest fleet ever built, humanity did not break. They smiled. The battle for Vela scarred the stars. The Sarathi world still lived, but at a terrible cost. Oceans boiled, continents cracked, fleets lay in ruins. The Terran ships limped, their hulls torn, their crews exhausted. The Leviathan floated, battered but alive, its weapons still glowing faintly. But the Oblivion Armada was not destroyed. It still stretched across the void, thousands of ships strong. And at its center the Eternal Wrath burned, wounded but alive. The Emperor's voice carried across the channels of war, deep, cold, filled with hate. "Humans, you defy me again and again. But this ends now. I will erase your kind from the stars. I will make the galaxy forget your smiles." On the Leviathan, Captain Arya Vale stood tall, her face lit by the red glow of damage alarms. Around her, officers bled, consoles sparked, the deck trembled, yet her voice was steady. "Signal the fleet," she said. "We fight to the end. If this is our last day, then let it be one they remember forever." Admiral Rains stepped forward, his eyes calm, his lips curved in a faint smile. "Let's show them why we laugh at death." Mason sat in his fighter, the hull scorched, his body bruised. Around him his squad was half gone. Only a few ships remained. His comm crackled with Sergeant Vale's voice. "Mason, this is it. No more running." He smiled, though tears burned his eyes. "I was never planning to run, Sergeant." The fighters formed up, small sparks of light against the storm. Ahead of them stretched the Armada, endless and terrible. Behind them, the Sarathi survivors joined ranks with the humans. Two broken fleets standing against a monster. In the Sarathi capital below, civilians watched the sky glow with fire. Some prayed, some wept, but most simply whispered the words that had spread across the galaxy. They smile. That means they cannot lose. The final battle began. The Armada advanced, its guns blazing. Waves of fire slammed into Terran shields. Sarathi ships shattered in bursts of light. Human cruisers exploded, scattering wreckage across the void, but the defenders did not break. Railguns roared, torpedoes streaked. The Leviathan fired its main cannon again, tearing a hole through a dreadnought. Mason's squad dove into swarms of fighters, striking with precision, weaving between death. Every moment was agony, every second was loss. But still the humans smiled. The Eternal Wrath pressed forward, its hull scarred, its great cannon destroyed, but its fury undimmed. Its guns tore through Sarathi shields, its fighters swarmed like hornets. On its bridge, Imperial commanders sneered. The humans bleed. Soon they will fall. But even as their ships burned, the Terrans kept laughing, and the laughter shook the enemy more than the weapons. Arya Vale studied the battle from the Leviathan's bridge. Her ship was dying, half its guns destroyed, shields gone, engines failing, yet it still moved, still fought. She turned to her crew. "We can't win by fire alone, we must strike their heart." Admiral Rains nodded. "The Eternal Wrath." "Yes," Arya said. "If we kill the Emperor's flagship, the Armada will break. They fight for fear of him. Remove that fear and they will scatter." The crew exchanged looks. It was madness. The Leviathan was broken. The fleet was dying. But then, one by one, they smiled. "Set course," Arya ordered. "Straight for the heart." The Leviathan roared forward, engines blazing, tearing through enemy fire. Cruisers formed around it, Sarathi ships shielding its flanks. Together they carved a path through the Armada. Mason saw the great ship moving, its scarred hull glowing. He felt hope ignite in his chest. "That's it," he whispered. "Go, Leviathan, go." His squad followed, cutting down fighters that swarmed toward the giant ship. The Eternal Wrath loomed ahead, its guns blazing, its shields glowing. It was a fortress, a monster, a god of war, but the Leviathan did not falter. Arya Vale stood on the bridge, her voice sharp. "All power to the cannon, every last drop. This is our shot." Engineers scrambled, generators hummed, lights dimmed. The great cannon charged, its hum rising higher and higher until the decks shook. The Emperor's voice filled the comms, mocking, cold. "Do you think your toy can kill me? You are nothing. You are children playing at war." Arya only smiled. "Then let the children show you how to play." Fire. The Leviathan's beam tore through the void, slamming into the Eternal Wrath's shields. For a moment the shields held. For a moment the flagship seemed invincible. Then the shields cracked. The beam ripped into the hull, tearing through decks, splitting steel, igniting fire. The Eternal Wrath staggered, wounded but not yet destroyed. The Armada roared in fury. Imperial ships swarmed to protect their flagship. The Leviathan shuddered as fire slammed into it. Alarms screamed, decks burned, but the humans did not stop. "Charge." "Again," Arya ordered. Her crew stared. The ship was falling apart. The cannon could not survive another shot. But she only smiled. "Do it," she said. "This is why we built her." Mason's squad dove toward the flagship, weaving through fire. He saw the holes torn in its hull, the flames inside. "Hit their guns," he shouted. "Clear the way." "For the Leviathan!" His squad followed. Fighters crashed into turrets, sacrificing themselves to buy seconds. Mason fired again and again, his guns glowing red. Sergeant Vale's voice cut through the storm. "Mason, don't you dare die before the finish." He laughed. "Wouldn't dream of it." On the Eternal Wrath, panic spread. Officers screamed. Fires raged. The Emperor stood silent, his cloak burning, his eyes glowing with fury. "They think they can kill me," he said softly. "They think they can win." He raised his hand. "Then let them learn despair." On the Leviathan, the cannon charged one last time. The ship groaned, its decks splitting, its crew fighting to keep it alive. Admiral Rains stood at Arya's side. His face was pale, his body weak, but his smile was wide. "Do it," he said. "Show them who we are." Arya Vale's voice rang across the ship, across the fleet, across the galaxy. "For humanity, for our allies, for every world that has suffered." Fire. The beam shot forth brighter than a star, stronger than any before. It struck the eternal wrath at its heart. The flagship screamed, steel tore, fire erupted. The beam pierced its core, and the ship exploded in a storm of light and fire. The eternal wrath was gone. The armada faltered, ships froze, crews panicked, fear spread faster than orders, and then, one by one, Imperial ships fled. The armada broke. Apart, the galaxy watched as the impossible happened. The Empire ran. The Leviathan floated in silence, its hull torn, its decks aflame. Half its crew was gone, but it still lived. On the bridge, Arya Vale stood amid the smoke and fire. She looked at her crew, broken but alive. She smiled. "We did it," she whispered. "We smiled to the end." Admiral Rains sank into a chair, his body failing, but his grin still bright. The galaxy will remember this day. They will remember humanity. They will remember the smiles. Mason landed his fighter on a scarred deck. His hands shook, his body ached, but his grin was wide. Sergeant Vale met him, her armor burned, her face smeared with ash. "You're alive," she said. "Of course," Mason said, laughing. "I told you, I wouldn't dream of dying before the finish." She shook her head, but her lips curved into a smile. Across the galaxy, word spread faster than light. The Emperor's flagship destroyed. The Oblivion Armada broken. The humans victorious. On world after world, chains of fear fell away. Statues of the Emperor were torn down. Songs of freedom rose. And in every whisper, in every cheer, one truth remained. The humans had smiled in the face of death, and death had turned away. In the throne hall of the Empire, silence reigned. The Emperor lived, but his power was broken. His admirals feared him. His subjects doubted him. His enemies grew bold, and in that silence the galaxy realized the truth. The age of fear was ending, and the age of humanity had begun.